혹시 제 목소리 들리나요? 네. Hello everyone. We'll be shortly starting soon, and meanwhile, please turn on your cameras. Thank you. 교수님 시작해도 괜찮을까요?
괜찮고 아니면은 a few minutes wait 해도 되고.
네네. 그럼 한 1분 정도만 있다가 시작하겠습니다. 네. Hello everyone. Thank you very much for coming and joining to our the seasonal webinar series. And so since last year, we have been obtaining lots of interesting information and knowledge in Korean language and culture with Professor Jieun Kiaer. And please let me begin with a brief introduction of her, and then we'll be hearing about Konglish and Korean wave. So Jieun is a professor in Korean language and linguistics and also cultural studies, and she has been studying in the Korean language related linguistics and translingual and young children language acquisitions. And she's also teaching several courses in Hertford College and University of Oxford, such as empirical the syntax, bilingualism, and translinguism, and translating the Asian literature to European languages, including English, and also the particle grammar and so on. So I'm very excited to, and also honored to introduce Jieun to everyone here.
Hello, everyone. And it's very nice to meet you, and thank you for joining me on Thursday afternoon. So I hope you enjoy this time together, and I hope I don't make it too bored. Okay, let me share my screen. Can you see my screen? No? Can you? No?
Okay.
Let me just stop it and share it again.
Yeah.
It worked, so I hope it should. I hope it worked. Okay, right. Okay, it works.
Yes, yeah. We can see that. Yeah.
Okay, great. Instead of slideshow, I just use this because I think I got some. Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay, and can you see the screen okay?
Yes, no problem. Yeah.
Oh, great. So I hope you are able to, you could ask me questions at the end, but always Zoom talk is almost, I feel always like I'm speaking to myself, but at least I can see you. So so Korean, Konglish, and the Korean wave. So you can kind of, I'm sure you remember this from the Parasite, the eating Japa ramdon. So in the Korean wave and Konglish, kind of the topic I'm talking today is what is Konglish, and what is Konglish, and how is sort of manifested in Korean wave and so on. And also at the same time, I want to kind of although I'm going to talk about the brief history of English language in Korea, in Korean Peninsula, in Korean language, but also this talk today and tomorrow make us to think about our own identity, and also help us to rethink about English language too. So my research is, as someone just introduced, it's kind of I'm looking at language identity, the relation between language and identity, and the formation of so-called what I coined translingual words, which is difficult. I mean, different from nation-state defined language and words in a sense. So yeah, I hope this makes us to think about those kind of key core questions that we have, and also I planning to play some video clips to help you understand the nature of Konglish, Korean English, so on. Yeah, so today I'm going to kind of give you kind of more idea about Konglish, the nature of Konglish, as well as how it is used in different Korean wave formats such as K-drama or K-film. And I worked over summer and actually for many years for OED, Oxford English Dictionary, as consultant in Korea for looking after Korean words in the OED. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, those 26 words which received a lot of media spot last 2 months. Also, I'm going to, as I said, bring some questions that are very much relevant, not only to the Korean speakers or Korean users, but in general, English users and English speakers overall. And then tomorrow, I'm going to talk more like linguistic characteristics of Konglish words. And today it will be like more or less, I'm going to tell you about the impact and how these words are used in different K-media format. And yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about. So English and Korea. And also today, today's talk and tomorrow's talk based on a few of my publication. I wrote 2014 this book, The History of English Words in Korean. I called it English loanwords in Korean and back in 2014, but I'm also arguing in my recent publication that loan or borrowing doesn't make sense, because a lot of Konglish words that we are going to talk about today and tomorrow are not like never, we borrowed from English language, but we made it by ourselves. So I kind of have this model like first generation, second generation, and global words, and explaining different the identities of words. And so, of course, in the first language contact, you receive a lot of words, but then after the language settled, then you make your own words. And a lot of Konglish words that we know are sort of Korean-made English words. So it's kind of what I call second generation and global words later on. But Korea received English and entered the Korean peninsula only, like 120 years ago. So the history is very short. And of course, as we know, Korea is very much like Japan and China under Sino, under Chinese language, Chinese script, Hanja 문화권. So it's Sino-sphere, like we use the Chinese characters to communicate with others and so on. Of course, we had Hangul too. So I'll talk a little bit about Hangul tomorrow. But so the history was very, very, short. But in 1937, this teacher, Lee Jong-guk, complained in 1937 that I can't make out what the recent newspapers say because they use too much English. So this is 1937. It's not like I'm talking about 2021, 1937. I already like English became so like popular, particularly among the elite people started to use English. They switched from Chinese into English, and English became so popular, particularly for the students and the teachers and academics. So his complaint in 1937 was, I can't make out what the recent newspapers say because too much English. That was 1937. And then I think that from then on, there's no stop really. Like English fever, we coined this new term in academic. In an academia, sort of English fever, education fever. You can think about Korean helicopter moms and so on. But English became very much like a sort of asset for success. And teaching English starts very young. So I did recently this book, Young Children's Language, Foreign Language Anxiety. So basically, you know, Korean moms parents think that you have to teach your children English, not only when they're young, but you know, even when they are in mother's womb. So they start teaching English or start reading books or, you know, listening to some English pronunciation when they were little baby, you know, they were not yet born. So it's kind of really, I think the fever is such, and use a lot of money, and but also because of the methodology. Probably I won't talk about much today, but in this book I basically worked on how, you know, the basic language anxiety, how that, you know, has impact in children's future, not only present, and how it's important to look after their well-being more than just education. That was this book about. But you know, they so it's very often dads stay, moms go with kids to foreign country and study English. So English is very important in South Korea. Tuition fee, according to my research, like normally you pay about monthly. Of course, it depends on where you are. If you're in Gangnam, you pay in a very luxurious area, you pay about $1,400 per month for, you know, for the little child for just English education. So it's very expensive. Yeah, and so kind of the thing I want to point out is that English is very, very important in South Korea, not only back in 1937, but right now too. Very important asset, and you know that you need to live a successful life. But at the same time, Koreans are very obsessive about this Konglish, and to have the proper English, they call it. And the things that I find in 조선일보 article, there's like this cartoon saying Konglish is the enemy of Korean. And I did this big data research where I kind of pick up from using sketch engine to the, you know, how Korean people think about Konglish. And very often Konglish has a connotation, a very negative connotation. It's a bad English, it's not good English. It's the English that we need to change, we need to get rid of. But and you know, I think this cartoon shows the extreme attitude about Konglish words in Konglish, Korean English in general, like bye-bye, Konglish you need to kill. Konglish we need to, is the biggest enemy of Korean people. There was the 조선일보 article. It was quite extreme. But as I said about this model, like first and second generation and so on, you know, when you think about South Korean life right now, as I will show more later through the video clips from different K-drama and films, everything what we see, everything we enjoy are actually the word in terms of, like, you know, how they are represented in words. They are all Konglish. They are represented in Konglish. They are kind of, because Korean, 80% of Korean words, Korean vocabulary are two-syllable words. Koreans are very good in terms of making Konglish words, a bit of English, a bit of Korean, native Korean or Sino-Korean together and make two-syllable words. So, you know, two-syllable word, in order to make two-syllable words, in linguistics is called a blending. So you don't just use the word that you heard or received from English speakers originally, but you kind of have to do some sort of you have to make another word, and you have to make it short. The first process you have to make short, and you have to also make it kind of useful to your linguistic situation. So the way how people accept words, of course the words, you know, you have so many words each day, but in our daily life, but you have to make it somehow, modify it, accommodate it to the way that suits you best, can, you know, capture your needs most pragmatic, you know, your pragmaticness in the most efficient, most optimal way. And in order to do that, Koreans inevitably had to create so many Konglish words, and they are part of it. But somehow, like as just this cartoon shows, linguistic authorities in Korea, South Korea, very much like think about those Konglish words as something that one needs to purify. The word purification is very often used in linguistic context of South Korea, like purification, you have to purify those words because these hybrid words, these Konglish words are improper. These messages even communicated on the Hangul Day, 9th of October this year. Like 치맥 is great that it's entered OED, but still these words are somehow hybrid words. They're not really ourselves. They're not like native Korean words. They're not like pure Korean words. So we need to kind of replace them with the pure Korean words. This sort of linguistic ideology has been very, very prevalent in South Korean context. So long story short, Konglish words have been always kind of condemned as something wrong, bad, but it makes us to think about the identity of those words again. Probably I'm in Oxford, so I can think about the identity and usefulness of these words more objectively rather than in the way that how it's prescribed before. So yeah, so that also brings me the question about basically the identity and words. How can we define? This is something. This is kind of the model that I have. Like basically, simply speaking, there's no much point nowadays to define the words like Korean words and English word or Japanese or Chinese word. In the OED Oxford English Dictionary, there's so many Asian words that somehow classified as Chinese words, but probably it was because they thought all have some sort of Chinese characters, so they thought that's Chinese word. Like there's sort of a lot of the gray area. What I'm trying to say is that very difficult to define a word, the identity of words based on nation state identity, like this is Korean, this is Japanese and Chinese, because so many things culturally shared between them and among them. So kind of my model is like, let's not think about this Korean and English words, but let's think about this more translingual words that goes beyond the cultural nation state boundaries. And in a way, this going back to the question that we have to rethink about before we talk about Konglish words and their identity and impact, we need to think about English in general, like what is English language? In 1870, James Murray, when he's the first editor of Oxford English Dictionary, and he was very much puzzled when he first made this dictionary. How can we define English language? English is full of words that from everywhere. How can we define this is English words and this is foreign words and so on? And his English language is the language of Englishmen. Of which Englishmen? Of all Englishmen or some Englishmen? Does it include English of Great Britain and English of America, English of Australia, South Africa? How could we deal with it? And there's so many words. How can we do? What shall we do with these words? Shall we say every word that we collect from everywhere also part of English words, or should we and therefore include them in the Oxford English Dictionary or not? There was a big question, and there's been still this is still a big question in OED right now. But his view, Murray's view, was like, if possible, let's make everything, let's include everything. That was his view. But of course, as we know, the view changed to editor by editor throughout the history. But what I'm trying to say is it's not like very clear to define whether this is Korean or this is English or this is Chinese, Japanese, German, and so on, because we share so much. So, for example, like, this is two Korean food, Korean restaurants in London, and it's called Bunshik, and this is chimek and wings. And yeah, how would you say this is, of course, used to romanize, the Bunshik. The first one is romanized, and the second one is Hangul. What is the identity of these words, these brandings? Is it Korean because somehow Bunshik, the concept is Korean based, or not? Bunshik is going, probably will enter OED at some point because it's very popular. So, then is it English words, Bunshik, or what is it? And Bunshik, so many people use it. And chimek too. Chimek is now in OED, Oxford English Dictionary. What is the identity? Korean, English, very difficult to say. I coined them as Hallyu words because it's kind of more like this word, the way how they enter the English languages through Hallyu Korean wave rather than, because of their sort of nation state identity. So I kind of coined them Hallyu word with global identity rather than, and translingual in general rather than Korean English, one or the other. But I think these kind of images or these restaurants or this landscapes is not so much, it's not so unfamiliar to you. I think you may have seen a lot these days. And this was kind of one of the things that was most surprising to me. K-drama and K, now in OED, Oxford English Dictionary, K is kind of, you know, K means like Korean, basically, K-wave. So, you know, K-beauty, K-culture, K-food, K-style, and so on. It's this in Oxford English Dictionary. I was talking to my friend who was teacher in primary school teacher, and she was asking me, she was telling me that, you know, Jieun, I watched K-drama recently. So what is K-drama? It's Korean drama. And I was so surprised. I lived here 20 years. I was teaching 15, 16 years here. But like, you know, never heard people talking about K something like K drama or K film, you know, meaning like K means Korean. And it's been, you know, quite a kind of shock or a surprise to me. But again, like, you know, when you talk about this K, again, difficult to define. Well, is it Korean or English? Of course, it's OED, but so it has an English identity. But I think it's kind of difficult to say this is just English. There's a Korean also in many other places. European languages or like non-European language, they also talk about K-drama, and therefore is that the identity is not like bound in one language, English. English is a kind of mediation language for because of its global lingua franca nature, but I think it's kind of become K. The K is the nature is kind of again transcultural, translingual, and transnational. And as I said, this is kind of more the linguistic nature of this K, linguistic nature of Konglish words. I will go through tomorrow based on different fields like K-beauty words and so on. It will be fascinating to discuss tomorrow, but some of the things I can show, like how 2 syllables, 3 syllables. For English words to enter Korean lexicon, the first step is to make it kind of for Korean people to be able to speak and to understand and to pronounce without too much effort. And in order to do that, one has to make 2 or 3 syllables so that, you know, you have to chop it. That's how it shows. And again, like, you know, this is from Oxford Wasabi shop, and I again K-wings and chimek. It's very much like, you know, this is in Oxford, Britain today. You see so many sort of K prefixes, and in actually when it comes to we look at the landscaping, linguistic landscaping in the UK or, you know, big cities, you can very easily not only see K, English K, but also you can see a lot of Hangul as well, and kind of. So again, interesting, you know, probably not many people would be able to read Hangul, but what it shows is that, you know, people recognizing this Hangul as almost like some kind of interesting asset, you know, so people start using this K, not only K, but Hangul too. And one of the things about the Korean Hallyu words, or like, you know, Korean Konglish becomes global. Of course, although Konglish has been condemned by Korean nationals, Konglish was go global and become really popular. And OED alone, we have, you know, this year we put 26 words, but there are so many candidates, so on. And the reason why, you know, so many just Korean words entered English language is, of course, because of the culture behind Hallyu, Korean wave. For example, like, you know, BTS had a concert a few days ago in LA, face-to-face concert. And after the concert, 26 million tweets. Like, you know, the fandom is very big, 26 million tweets. And you know, they were talking about BTS, what the characteristics of fandom or fandom communication. Of course, they do, fandoms speak, talk in English. Their fandoms do not tweet in Korean. But interestingly, when they tweet about Korean culture or Korean wave, they somehow have sort of, they pick up some sort of Korean style writing, Korean style words, Korean style emojis, and so on. Emojis are also very interesting because fandom communicates. Emojis very easy to pick up, so they kind of, they want to combine something Korean. And I think this is, and also in doing that, they very often learn Konglish words, and they use Konglish words as well as, the Romanized forms of Korean words. Romanization, all this kind of more linguistic aspect, I'm going to talk tomorrow. But because Korean, actually, we are not from Romanization is not part of our orthography or transcription. So basically, you see so many variations. There's one can't just say there's one spelling. There's so many different spellings. It's because so many people actually, can hear the Korean words differently, and therefore Romanization could be all, have very much different versions and so on. We'll talk about tomorrow. But the BTS and the Korean wave, Korean film and Korean drama and so on, what happened was before the Korean culture was kind of more or less shown as a book, textual material. But if it's something, if you translate a novel or poem and so on, very often what happened last century was like, I would say almost before Vegetarian by Deborah Smith in 2014, the Anglicization was the first option. So whenever you translate anything Korean, for the sake of English audience, you have to make it simple. So in this procedure, a lot of things kind of cut down and made it more bland. One thing was in a vegetarian novel, there's so many Korean foods. So at the end, the editor had to make it quite simple, and like all these kimchi names had to go on. And I think it's understandable, because if you read the books, if you have so many cultural items, it makes you kind of difficult to understand if it's all based on textual material. But the Korean wave now more or less presented as media form, like drama and film. So the thing about drama and film is that you can see what it is visually, but you can always listen to what it is. So in a way, K-drama and K-film is something that you can learn language too, without too much effort. You can kind of have, because for example, like address terms keep coming, oppa, 언니, 누나, and so on, keep coming, and so you can actually learn it. I had the translation workshop last month about on translating Squid Game, and the word that people learned through by watching Squid Game. One of the key words was gambu, which even Koreans don't know what that means. So you learn those words because those words are repeated and you used. So it's kind of, in linguistics, called embodied language learning. So you learn it without too much effort, and the sound footage will remain. So these words will remain, and people will talk about it and will write about it. So, and the place where they talk about, write about is in social media. As you can see, 26 million tweets. So many people use these words, and in this way, these words, the Konglish words or Korean origin words, are kind of entering to English language because these people tweet about it and they talk about it. After watching Squid Game, people talk about it in social media, and in a way, these words become so popular. Imagine like 26 million tweets, and suddenly. But OED in many different places actually observe frequency and distribution altogether. But when you think about Hallyu words, not like, of course some words disappear, but many of the words, particularly food-related words, not disappear, but they stay for a while. Many of my colleagues said that Korean wave Hallyu will die around 2020. That was back in 2010, but now in 2020, I think it doubled, or it's going up rather than going down. So I think, like when you kind of observe those words, last 10 years, you can see, well, it's the words that actually deserve a place in the dictionary and deserve place in English or beyond in other languages too. And I think the Parasite played a very important role. So what he said, once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles, you will be introduced to so many more amazing films. I think it was kind of prophetic in one sense, because like looking back about the discussion about Squid Game translation and so on, I was so amazed. I'm teaching, I'm a pragmatics scholar, and I teach Korean translation all the time, but I never had this, experience this period where so many people, not necessarily studying Korean, interested in what is the meaning behind. Like everybody's, asking me, what are the things we are missing in this and that, and it's so fascinating. Again, like when I thought, wow, this is so interesting. I had to motivate my students to kind of think about in pragmatic sense and interpersonal dynamics, but actually this is what general public so much want to know about. So I'm very excited about the whole phenomena. But we'll talk about a little bit about Parasite later through the clips, but again, like English is full of the words from everywhere, and now in a way all these words have this origin somewhere else, but we all think this is English word. So I think when we say it's English word, it's kind of not like it's only existing English language, but when we say the word English word, it's almost like saying this is globally used, global words, which has translingual, transcultural nature. And when you think about these words, you can see, okay, it's used by everyone, it's global. And when we think about these Konglish words too, they are kind of global in nature. So what probably what I'm trying to also bring the message is that we should not have the idea like those words misused, wrong use. Any words, if it's used in another context, they have another different forms and they can have different meanings. For example, in Japanese, sake is in Japanese, it means just general liquor. But in English, sake is used Japanese liquor. So whatever word used in local place and the outside could be different. So what we should also understand the different nature and the added identity, added meanings, added forms. That's very much general and very common in many languages too. So and then I going back to in order to talk about Konglish, I kind of pick up some of the clips to tell you what do you think about Konglish. So this is one of the interview that Yoon Hyo-jung did through the BAFTA when she got the Best Supporting Actress award. So let's listen if you can. I play. Again, maybe let's listen another interview too.
Mr. Brad Pitt, finally, nice to meet you. Where were you while we were filming in Tulsa? It's very honored to meet you. As you know, I'm from Korea, and actually my name is Young, and most of European people call me Young, and some of them call me Yujung. But tonight, you are all forgiven. I cannot believe I'm here. Well, that's okay. Let me pull myself together. Okay. Thank you for the tremendous thanks to the Academy members who vote for me. And next speech, okay, they usually say, okay, thank you for the wonderful Minari family. Stephen, Isaac, Yeri, and Noel, Allen. We became a family. And most of all, above all, Lee Isaac Chung. Without him, I couldn't be here tonight. He was our captain and my director. So thanks to you, tremendous thanks to you. And I'd like to thank to, well, see, I don't believe in competition. How can I win Glenn Close, win over Glenn Close? I've been watching her so many performances. So this is just all the nominees, 5 nominees. We are the winner for the different movie, different role. We play the different role. So we cannot compete each other. Tonight I'm here is just, I have just a little bit luck, I think. Maybe I'm luckier than you. And also maybe it's American hospitality for the Korean actor. I'm not sure. But anyway, thank you so much. And I'd like to thank to my 2 boys who made me go out and work. So, beloved son, all and Noel. This is the result because mommy worked so hard. And I'd like to dedicate this award for my first director, Kim.
Yeah, maybe I can stop here, and then because we got other things to listen. But kind of she's my mom's age. Speaking in foreign language, although she lived in America a few years, not easy. I mean, if you're kind of English native speaker, English. I mean, I wouldn't use the word native speaker because then again, people nowadays don't use the word native speaker. What is native speaker? And so on. So but if you're kind of speaking English all the time, every day, maybe there's not much struggle. But if you're not like her, this is very difficult. Living with foreign language is not very easy. As I talk about the language anxiety, but for her, her English is kind of one very good example of Korean English, Konglish. Many people kind of, Korean English is basically Konglish, but Konglish is something that kind of has more negative connotation. And Korean English is sort of Korean style English. That's how I define it and how I define in my different academic publications. But for her English, we can see like her pronunciation, her way of saying, her use of language, her vocabulary. You can see like this sort of very, not like necessarily you can say this is like American English, but she has very much like Korean style English. She uses Korean English and she expresses very well. And one could say, well, this is broken English. The word broken is very often used in many contexts in English, but in the UK media, but also in the Korean, South Korean media, like she speaks, oh, it's great, she speaks in English, but it was broken English. But how can you say a language is broken? Everybody's language is different. We use many different languages. I use Korean and English all the time in my life. I don't think one is broken. Rather, it's something that if your different languages actually help you to build up your thought and your life and your culture. So anyway, her English, what could say broken English, but Korean English is broken English, wrong English. But kind of what I'm saying is that it's kind of cool English. It's a Korean style, best fit to cater for Korean people's needs. And so it's something I argue that Korean English is a very, cool English. I wrote this book 2014 about this basically in Korea. Konglish is linguistic and cultural asset for Korean and global users. Has a mixed views. Some people thought this is great in Korea. And some people said, why do you talk about Konglish in Oxford in particular? So I had to say, oh, you are in Oxford, why are you talking about Konglish? But I think it's something that, this negative connotation for Konglish is something that one should do, not have anymore. And it's kind of, Konglish was kind of fun, as you can see, like, this is, again, like, like, as I said, Korean is very good at, making, chopping and making 2-3 syllable words. And in star in English doesn't mean anything, but in Korean somehow innovatively made this new word, new branding, and it does not make sense to English speakers, but it does make sense to Korean people and Korean people. And maybe I'll talk about this later, but English now in Korea is not anymore foreign. Well, when we think about 1937 Lee Jong-guk's word, but actually English is everywhere and people kind of use it even in daily basis. So I think we don't have to kind of make it communicable to the, the particular variety of English speakers, UK English speakers, but as it is, I think it has a legitimate status as a variant of English language, English. And in a way, this is also from the Korean words, and Konglish was used in Southeast Asia. And I use this, I put this image because Southeast Asian English speakers played a very important role for Korean words or Hallyu words or Konglish words become global. I did some corpus work earlier, from 2000 onwards, and the people who actually used these words all the time were Southeast Asian fandom. They use this word, and their users actually, cited and used by UK, US media, and so on. So Koreans didn't actually try to translate what we have to English-speaking word, but they were actually acting as translators for Hallyu culture and Hallyu language in general. Oops. Okay. Oops. Oh. Okay. So this is another, the thing I talk about translingual words if you're interested in. But basically, so far, my kind of what I'm trying to say is that it's a very much like cultural asset rather than some negative connotation. These are the words that I worked with OED. This particular about these words, 26 words, I'll talk about it tomorrow. And maybe I talk about 2 words that occurred in Parasite, and then I'll show you some clips today. So this word like ramdon and panjia, these words actually, ramdon word is the word that's used in Parasite. And the first image that I showed, eating the jajang ramen with the beef. This word was made up by Darcy Puckett, the translator. He and then I thought maybe ram and don. If don maybe some like pork or like, but he said that ramdon is basically he found he made up a word, ramen plus udon, and he made this word. But because of this Parasite become so popular, ramdon become a word, and you can see like how ramdon became so popular. Different state, and then also at the same time, this ramen company made this, particular ramen that goes together with Parasite. So ramdon became a word, and panjiha again that also shows the living condition of the Kim family in Parasite. Again, became very much known. People understand what panjia means, and panjia again entered in, as one of the words circulated through the Parasite, and now used quite a lot. And again, like mukbang and chimek. Mukbang and chimek, these are 2 words actually entered the Oxford English Dictionary. I'll talk about this more tomorrow, but again, these 2 words, Korean dictionaries do not have these words. Koreans don't think these are Korean words. They think these are like traditional words they made, and also hybrid words. They don't deserve a place in Korean dictionary, but they are in OED. Because again, like there's a great fandom, social media communication, and people use this word so many times that OED recognize that these words deserve a place in OED, and they are in OED. So it's kind of interesting. People in 20 years time, 30 years time, when they do not know what mukbang is, they will go to OED, not to the Korean dictionary. So these Korean Hallyu words, Konglish words are in the OED, more received, accepted in Oxford English Dictionary than any Korean dictionary in South Korea. Mukbang is very interesting because Koreans say mukbang, and the way how Korean romanization work would be MEOK. But O and O sound are very difficult to romanize because English and many languages do not have O sound. So when you hear the word O, sound O, you hear, you kind of more perceive it as U. So it becomes mukbang. When you do the Twitter search about mukbang and mukbang, most viewers write mukbang, MUK, rather than MEOK. So Korean government will think that romanization will think MEOK, but the fandoms here MUK, and then the form that entered OED was MUK. So again, like think about linguistic authority. Who owns these words? Is it Korean or the Korean government or linguistic authority or the fandoms? My view is that the users will have the authority and the ownership. So people this is the way how people receive and use the word mukbang. So the mukbang is in the dictionary OED, and of course the meaning itself has been inherited from Korean K-wave culture, but the way how it's entered OED, English language, is mukbang, so MUK. Because of time, I won't talk too much from now on, but I'll show you some interesting clips. This is the BTS, Konglish with BTS, but maybe I will just share with you a few, but I think I have time to share this one.
Okay, what's your favorite Korean snack that should be everywhere? 가장 좋아하는 코리안 스낵. 그러니까 이 음식은 전 세계에 퍼져야 된다.
와우. 양념 치킨.
양념 chicken.
Yes, it's chicken.
Okay, I want to call it KFC because it's like Korean fried chicken. It's really, really, really tasty.
Yeah, delicious.
맛있죠, 양념 치킨.
완전 짱이죠.
Yup.
양념 치킨.
We call it kapjang.
예, 양념 치킨.
Yes. 또 있나요?
흑임자 치킨.
흑임자 chicken.
Yeah.
It's like a 흑임자 chicken. Okay.
Good job. 아스파라거스 구이. V.
말하지 말라고.
When we say this, he just said, V just said some roasted asparagus. Is that right? And in Korean, we have to pronounce it like asparagus kui. And he thought he want to sound it like English, so he says like asparagus gui. And
yeah, this is kind of interesting, but the kind of BTS language, I want to leave it for the next session. So kind of what I'm trying to tell you about BTS songs and BTS talk in this group, very much so like makes us to think, is it Korean or English? Their songs also very often the lyrics are a bit of Korean and English, and the fandoms use a bit of Korean and a bit of English, of course, or romanized forms. But again, like makes us real question, like what is do we need to have that boundary? But this is Korean and this is English, or do we just don't need that at all? So when to talk about they talk in Korean a bit and then they English, and in linguistics, we call translanguaging, but they go back and forth using basically the best as they can express. It's the same thing with us too. Like Konglish is very important because if it's useful for us to express ourselves best, like Yunyeojung, this is really important. Is that we don't have to speak like someone else. The best way we can express ourselves, our needs, our emotions, or everything is to speak to the language that we're most familiar with, that we can also cater our needs best. And I think that Konglish serves that purpose very well, not only for Korean people, but also for the fandoms too. And you heard about this yangnyeom. The BTS likes this yangnyeom chicken. And again, like the fandom talks about yangnyeom and so on. So this is the way how the word circulated and becomes popular and then enters OED. So it's very different picture that we had before this didn't happen. But now we are living in social media generation and the fandoms and Twitter generation. So these actually are very much interactive process. And in this way, the words enter to the global lexicon. So this process is something that one has never seen before. It's very innovative, interactive, dynamic process. And then there's some other clips, but because of the time, I will show you two more. This again, maybe this one. Two clips from Parasite.
I'm deadly serious.
And Parasite again, like English actually also means that speaking English like her means that she has got particular social status. So English, using a lot of English words, or like not only just word, but speaking in English actually means that I have particular social class. So it's kind of more classist thing in South Korea, and we can see that from Parasite very often. Again, this one, she.
Is it okay with you?
There's no need for her to speak in English, but she does it, like in a Bong Joon-ho very, very well crafted. Is that very often he uses English very different places. It helps for the viewers global viewers to understand too. Many English words. Also, it kind of shows the sheer reality of South Korean life and so on. 1937 complained, but it's now it's 2021. So English is really a part of Korean life and Korean communication. And let's just listen to one Bong Joon-ho's interview himself with the.
일제한 그 집이 일제한 그 세마이 베이스먼트라고도 할 수 있는 그 반지하 집, 한국 이 유명한 아키텍트가 지은 집이죠. 그래서 이 박씨 부부의 되게 세련된 취향을 또 보여주는 그런 집이에요. 무식하고 돈만 많은 사람들이 아니에요. 아주 basement home, a real home. Did you build that? Because it looks like a real semi-basement that you've been working. Everything looks very real, and actually we built it. The semi-basement house and all the alley and all the neighborhood, we built it. And maybe I cannot say the reason here, but maybe if you watch the film, you can. 스콜라스톤 말하는 거지. 산수경석 everything looks very real, and neighborhood we built it. And 젊은 애가 그걸 들고 오잖아요. 되게 사실 황당한 장면이고 이런 사람들이 메타포리컬하다 해야 되는데 배우가 먼저 그거를 어나운스 해버리죠. 그래서 어쩌면 감독은 내가 감독이지만 어쩌면 CEO죠. 네.
So in the semi-basement home, you only get 15 minutes of
So, I mean, I don't think you need to understand the whole thing, but what Bong Joon-ho does very often, Bong Joon-ho's interview when he got Parasite out, very often he's very good at playing like a bit of Korean and a bit of English. He's perfectly fine speaking in English, but he's kind of, he makes people too curious about what he's speaking in Korean, because he kind of says something very kind of personal, humorous in Korean. And then he let others to be curious for a second, and then he speaks back in English. So he can do 100% Korean English, but he does like create some like curiosity by speaking Korean and then English, and then so on. Later on, Sharon translates it into English, but he's very good at playing those two things around. But again, like the way how he speaks in Korean, you can hear also many English words. It kind of gives you some cues. If you don't know Korean, okay, you can. This is what the Mayo and Komodo does in the interview, like pick up some of the words and then make up their own meanings and then check with the Sharon Choi. So I think this is also very fascinating, the way how Korean English is used embedded in English or embedded in Korean. And this is another one of the interview, and then I think we are almost there, so maybe listen to this one.
Director Bong, my understanding is that you have different inspirations for all of your films.
Yeah.
For Okja, you saw a pig one day
on the street.
and it was your inspiration. Yeah. What was your inspiration for Parasite?
Yeah, it's very strange. It was already. It's very strange. It was already inside me, in my brain, like a parasite. So yeah, it's like a parasite. It's already there,
right,
inside, but we don't know when and how it came to me. So it's something like that. The idea was already there around 2013, winter time, during the post-production of Snowpiercer. Yeah.
And Song, when he first spoke to you about this film, because you know each other, did he talk to you about the characters or the plot mostly, or the themes and what he wanted to comment on?
아무것도 안 들었어요.
I just said, yes, Song, let's do something together. And he said, yes, why not? Yeah. That was all. Quite simple.
저한테는 이제 봉준호 감독이 같이 이제 작업하는 것 자체가 굉장히 큰 가치와 그런 의미가 있는 것이지. 뭐 어떤 영화, 어떤 주제 이런 것보다는 그만큼 이제 20년의 어떤 믿음과 어떤 그런 게 있겠죠.
And what about for you, Choi? What did he first tell you in your first conversations?
When he first approached me, that happened as same thing as me. He didn't really say what I was gonna play. He just told me to just stay skinny, because I was skinny. Oh, I'm skinny right now, but back then I was more skinnier. So he's like, stay skinny. You're gonna soon I will give you some ideas and roles, whatever. And then
actually, we worked together in my previous film called Okja. Yeah, he was crazy truck driver in the movie.
Song, what was your reaction when you first read the script? What was your reaction to all of the plot twists?
그래서 이제 봉준호 감독이 이제 정말 이렇게 더 유머와 함께 더 어떤 주제나 이런 것들이 더 날카로워진 느낌, 무슨 얘기를 하고자 하는 것이 굉장히 날카롭고 집요하고 또한 웃기고 이런 어떤 느낌이 제일 처음 들었던 것 같아요.
So yeah, this is very interesting. Again, like three of them understand English very well, but they kind of sometimes speak Korean English or sometimes speak just more like Canadian English. Some people, and then Song just decides to speak in Korean because probably, that may be best way for him to express. So, so I can see here, like the way how you choose linguistic repertoire is basically, you choose something that could cater your needs best. And this, we can see the dynamics very well. One thing I think was quite interesting here is that he was, Bong Joon-ho addressed as Director Bong, because the kamdo, director in Korea, very like hierarchical society. So even if in English you don't have that things, but I think it's sort of talking to Korean people, very often Bong Joon-ho is addressed as Director Bong, whereas Song is considered as like Song, like just Song. Again, like Korean society, the actors not very much inspected compared to directors. So I think it was interesting to see that interview. Very often people address them in English, Director Bong versus Song. Yeah, that's another interesting thing. But maybe for this slide onward, I can talk tomorrow because of the time. But I think yeah, what we discussed today very much so, like, what is the Konglish, and then how, whether it's possible to distinguish between the two, Korean and English, and so on, and the role of social media in terms of circulating those Korean words. But the rest of the, from this slide on, I can talk tomorrow, along with linguistic characteristics of Konglish words. If you have any question, please do let me know. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Jieun, for a wonderful and very intellectual lecture. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to leave your comments in the typing chat. Then I'll be introducing one by one to all of us. So I think Bera, she has a question. So she asked us about where the Korean phrase, the fighting, I mean, which cheers someone else, where it comes from and how it started to be spread out, and or do you have any other idea in terms of your academic view?
Fighting is very, very interesting word. Like, sometimes you romanize HW fighting, or like just like English of FIGHTING. This word we included in the OED this year, and we sort of adding some Korean meaning. But kind of, yeah, I think again, like fighting in the past, people would have said, you have to change it, fighting, into cheer up or something else. But then now I think, because again, like through the fandom, fighting was one of the words that fandoms use so much in the fandom community, and it became visible in the OED net, and it entered Oxford English Dictionary. But it's again, yeah, this basically the way how you see the fighting from of course fighting has been used long before social media time in Korea, like cheer up, and like not like let's fight, but it's kind of more like cheer up. So these words, there's some sort of gray area whether like those words like skinship or like fighting, all those words, whether they actually Japanese origin and then entered Korean later on. Particularly this is a concern for many people who want to purify Korean language, and the first target of purification is sort of Japanese origin words, so they're very much like into it. But long story short, nobody knows how these words actually entered into Korean first, and how we started to use these words in a particular way we use. So difficult to find the real etymology behind. But I can say that the way how fighting entered to the English lexicon right now is not due to the earlier evidence, but because of the fandom communication. Fandoms use these words a lot, and so and in a way, from fandom's perspective, of course, learning new Korean words is interesting and you can learn it. But if you have some sort of Konglish words, it's easier to learn. Of course, Konglish words meaning could be different from what you imagine from what it is in English. So we'll talk about tomorrow, like K-beauty words, like a lot of cosmetic words. You don't know what actually it means. It's English, but you don't know. I don't know either. I have to go to the shop and ask what it is. But still, there's some familiarity. You can learn another meaning, but if it's romanized, if it's anglicized word, somehow like looks like English words, or in a romanized form, it's from fandom's perspective, it's easy to learn rather than like purely authentic Korean words. These words, less familiar. You need to hear a lot to remember. But many sort of words, for example, like Bong Joon-ho uses or like Yoon Hyo-jung uses, you can understand. You can kind of, the meanings do not change entirely. There's some modification, but still you can understand. So those words are very much like good option if you are like entering into Korean culture or entering into Korean, Korean media. So these were very popular words and relatively easy to understand, relatively easy to remember. So these words become very, very popular and used quite a lot by fandoms. And yeah, long story short, fighting and skinship are these words that entered the OED through the fandom.
Yes. Lastly, I wish to ask for Santi. I mean, you also expressed a bit your opinion, and I think you may ask or suggest us your view.
Yes. Because you mentioned hybrid words, I know that there are a lot of hybrid words in a lot of languages. In Dutch, in Malaysian, they call it Singlish as well, because it's a same form of like Konglish words, and it's widely spoken now in Malaysia, in Singapore, and it's the locals adapt to it, and some words are used in English as well because it's English. So isn't hybrid words, can't we see hybrid words as a way forward? Because even in English, there are hybrid words. The last one that entered the dictionary was in it. In it is isn't it, but they mix two of them together, and it's not a foreign word, it's an English word. But it is a hybrid word that became a new form of word. So shouldn't we see hybrid words as the way forward, a new way of a new generation speaking? Because from Old Korean, used to be a lot of Chinese characters, Chinese Hanja, and then they switched to now Old Korean. So isn't it a phase that we can get into instead of trying to purify it, just accept it? I understand that a lot of Konglish words are used by BTS. Also a lot of the social media, a lot of pop groups, because it caters more to the wider global audience. And it's now, K is now a brand. So you put K in everything. Korean is a brand. So isn't it a way of saying Konglish words instead of negative, it's a good thing? Because 20 years ago, 10 years ago, you mentioned K something, people would be like, I don't know what is K, unless you're already in the fandom. But now it's getting more popularity, more popular, and it gains the momentum of popularity. It's a rolling ball.
I think it's very, very important. So I have this, what you said is very, very good. Thank you so much. I kind of, in my model, I think I said hybrid words are a very important part of this global lexicon. And English language is changing. Of course, as you, maybe I can quickly show you the model. In the past 1985 model, like, you have the hierarchy of English language. So for example, let's say, if I have it, there's inner circle English, outer circle English, expanding circle English. Long story short, British English is good, American English is good. If you are from, so Filipino English or Singaporean English, not outer circle, and then expanding. So that this very much hierarchical model, also the negative connotation about Singlish or Japanese, Konglish, and so on. But this negative connotation kind of all based on very much hierarchical view. There's a very good English, privileged English, and then the lesser version. One example, if you're from Singapore, to enter many UK universities, you have to take English exam and have to, the English language score. Well, actually, their mother tongue is English. It's very much like, we're living, sort of, it can be confusing, isn't it? Your mother tongue is English, but you have to take English exam. What I'm saying is that this hierarchical thought is still there. Nevertheless, I think what social media and so on, what it shows is that English language is changing. And in a way, it was, when you think about from OED perspective, it was kind of, one can imagine like Oxford English Dictionary, Oxford English, very much like privilege, but social media and, kind of more global fandom across sport, what it shows is that the language, the common language matters, commoners language matters, not the elite language. And in the past, like in the words, we didn't make words, we only received the words and we used it. But now in social media time, or, in very much like in a global time, even if my native, my first language is not English, I can make up new words, and then people can use. Everybody can participate in making and sharing your words, and in a way, I think this is kind of the era we are living, which is kind of really encouraging in a sense. So long story short, what you said, I totally agree that the hybrid word, or the variety of English words and language has to be more appreciated and has to have the equal status from the other varieties of English and the other Englishes, and this sort of more, like a hierarchical view should go somehow. And it's good for English too. I said in another interview that actually having skinship in English language is a good thing, because in a way, in English compared to Korean, has very much like lesser vocabulary or for interpersonal relation, or different types of emotions and so on. But by kind of adopting words like skinship and so on, it can kind of English lexicon become enriched. It's diverse, but it as very by adopting this word, English becomes enriched in one sense. And so it's kind of it's very good in a way in both sides. And but one thing that we have to overcome is very much like prejudice, or like for the very much hierarchical thought. And I think that should that should go. And in a way, in the same line, the Konglish words and Konglish words had to be appreciated more by Koreans and also global fandoms. And I think what I discussed about Korean and Konglish, not just about Konglish and Korean English words, but it could be applied to anywhere, like particularly, the English words and culture from outer and expanding circle. I think that same argument can be applied too.
Right. Oh, I'm terribly sorry, but I think we need to stop. Due to the time as planned. So it was really very interesting lecture for me. I mean, as a Korean person who grew up in South Korea, and I just mainly thought about the Konglish issue as just domestic problem. But now I think I realized that it also could be discussed in international view. I mean, considering the spread of the Korean culture all over the countries. So thank you very much for your lecture, Jieun, today, and also thank you very much for all of you to come to this lecture in this cold weather, and hope that we will see you once again tomorrow. And we'll be beginning on time on 5 p.m. tomorrow, and see you tomorrow. Okay.
See you tomorrow. Thank you.